Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Welcome to Breathe. I'm David Person. And of course, you know, every week we have with us Pastor Debleaire Snell, the speaker director of Breath of Life and the senior pastor of the Oakwood University Church, and also Pastor Kirk Nugent. He's the media pastor at Oakwood, and he also is the media guru, at least that's what I call him, for Breath of Life. Well, last week we were talking about hope. And we're going to continue that conversation. Our premise is that hope has been essential to helping Black people survive in America. And actually, it probably applies to all people. For how can we make it without hope? All right, here's part 2 of that conversation.
Progress.
That's it.
Even if it's incremental, breeds hope.
It breeds hope. Yes.
It's funny because even as we're talking about hopefulness in the African American community, I think, a lot of it is perspective. Mm-hmm. So when you look at the pathologies, whether it's crime or drugs or, certain breakdowns in our family, or even just the way some of our businesses or institutions run, like there are times where I'm kind of processing that and I'm listening to the language and some of the rhetoric, and I'm thinking to myself, and I could be wrong on this, but I'm thinking if a people go through the experiences, the inequities, and the injustices that we've gone through, I actually think our story and even our place in society is actually a story of triumph.
It's a story of triumph.
And it's filled with hope.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I mean, when you look at the brutality, the insane brutality, the inhumanity of slavery, and not just the physical act of being bound in chains, all of the mental abuses and atrocities that kind of come along with that.
That's right.
I think it is actually amazing that we are as far along in education, financially, politically. I don't even think that you can overstate the Obama presidency. I think it's symbolic of a lot of different things. But that is immense to say that in these United States, that you had a 2-term African-American president. That's huge.
Living in a house, by the way, that was built by slaves.
Built by slaves. Yeah.
That is a reality right there.
Because I think the mismanagement of the narrative is when we allow people to make it seem as if slavery was 18 lifetimes ago. Like an old enough African-American may have had a parent or a grandparent that was a slave.
Absolutely.
When we talk about the apex of the civil rights movement, that's my parents' age. Yeah. When we think about even, there's this picture they called of Jerry Jones.
Okay.
Y'all remember this protesting the integration of that school with opposition and slurs and all that stuff. These are people that are captains and titans of industry right now. I'm not, casting any aspersions on him personally or anything like that. But I'm saying these are people that were teenagers or folk in their early 20s or 30s that are people that are in their 50s or 60s now. Yeah. So I think that there is this assumption that we should be so much further along by now. Like Jim Crow, this is not written ancient history. No. This is lived history.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Brown versus the Board of Education, the Federal Protection Act. These are fairly recent. Most people who are writing these books lived through these occasions.
Wow.
And so what I'm saying is, when you look at other people that have gone through oppression, both here and across the world, they've not quite made the strides that we have as a community. And I'm saying all that to say, I think that Ellen White makes a statement. She says, we have nothing to fear for the future.
Except.
Lest we forget the way in which God has led us in the past.
That's it.
And when I look at the way God has led us as a people, with as much injustice and inequity that still abounds, I think that there is still a cause for celebration and hope. And I think that when you stop reviewing and you stop looking at history, I think you begin to assume that everything starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. Like I would hear people say in response to like George Floyd and Derek Chauvin and Black Lives Matter, that series of events that kind of led into 2020, flowed out of 2020. Man, blacks and racism and Trump is kind of, he's doing his thing. Yeah. It's never been this bad. And I'm kind of like, no. This is probably the most overt things have been in your lifetime.
Right.
And this is someone that was probably, well, no, they were actually about my age, mid-40s.
Oh.
And I was kind of like, no, I think.
Okay.
But I just think that, but it's based on this mindset that, man, it's 2020. Mm-hmm. We're so far removed. Like, no, we're not really that far removed from very overt, obvious, dangerous forms of injustice against us as a people.
There are people alive who still remember colored water fountains and lynchings and the systematic rape of black women. I mean, all of that stuff is still very present in the memory banks of people that are alive today.
I mean, we think about Rodney King. I was in high school.
Real talk.
I mean, that was 1994. I was a junior in high school.
But I think, again, it speaks to the concept of no review. Because you haven't reviewed, when was that? How long ago was that? Okay, man, that actually is not that long ago.
Not long ago,
We're a lot further along in my mind than we probably should be. And there is an ebb and a flow. There is a season. And for many, I think, especially that 2020 time frame, some of the names that you just called there, George Floyd and others, some of us had not seen that season ever before.
Right,
And so we began to be like, whoa, things have gone backward. And then we also have to take into consideration, you have to know your own personal history and then your collective history as well. So I'm a child of immigrants. And so, but my parents, unlike several of their colleagues, were very intentional about us as their children growing up in this country, knowing what it meant to be black in this country. So I have to recognize that I have that in my background. I have that as my framework, my perspective, the lens through which I view life. And so you have to know how you approach certain situations as well.
The way I see this, we're talking about hope and how to preserve it and the importance of it. I think one of the biggest sources and protectors of this, guardians of hope, are you black preachers. The church and black preaching got to, and that's one thing I think that really distinguishes it from, generic Christian preaching. If it's really done right and well, we are able to get a sense of not only the need to hope, but what the experience in trying to hope has been. And why hope matters so much.
Wow.
It's got to, again, done well. And I credit, as our pastor, I credit you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
It's got to encapsulate, not in a way that is, necessarily accusatory, but then again, the truth is the facts are facts.
It's going
if it steps on toes, it
steps on toes, but encapsulates the challenge. I mean, being black in America has been a challenge for 400 years. Since 1619. That's over 400 years. And it has. I mean, many of us. I think about my own family history. One of my grandfathers was almost lynched.
Wow.
I mean, he literally. This was in Florida, by the way.
Wow.
Your home state. They literally. He and his brothers were in a shootout with some white men who were trying to kill my grandfather.
Wow.
That's a part of my family history.
Wow.
That's not that far.
No.
That's not
your
far.
grandfather.
My grandfather, so we're going back, roughly Well, at this point, probably roughly 100 years, 90 to 100 years.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you know, it's amazing because, like, you know, I think Jaden is my oldest son. He's 13 now, so he's at the stage where we're giving him a little bit more freedoms in terms of riding his bike a little further, maybe going into a store by himself, that kind of stuff. But with that comes a certain conversation that must be had.
That's a reality.
That says, when you are out and about, this is how you engage. This is what you can and cannot do. Even if you're dealing with law enforcement, even if your white counterparts are protesting and defying authority. Son, those rules may not apply to you. Now, this is the crazy thing. This is the same conversation that my dad had with me, that his parents had with him, his parents had with them. Like, these conversations are still necessary, probably 80 years apart.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying? And so I'm just saying, So, but I do think that to that point, we've got to preach it. But I do think that, you know, we've got to figure out a way to partner with our schools and our institutions. Because, I mean, I just think that we are seeing the intentional removal
of those,
of certain things from the history books. And if we're not careful, in 40, 50 years, it will be as if it never happened.
I hate to say it, Pastor, but it could be a lot less time than that.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And so that statement that you shared earlier, we have nothing to fear for the future except we forget. It works both ways, except we forget how God led us. But if we forget, period, we're doomed to repeat what we have forgotten.
That's right.
So there's some really big, huge components there. But one of the things I love about what you shared, and even in the perspective of having that conversation with your son, while it is sad that the conversation needs to be had, but it is still a slightly different conversation than what was had back in your time, or you know, when our parents had the conversation, or when their parents had it with them. And so even as we review those, there's still an opportunity to see where progress has been able to take us.
So, you know, I just went to see the movie Origin with some friends. Origin is a movie about how Isabel Wilkerson wrote the book Caste.
Oh wow!
Which is a really powerful examination of what's at the root, even underneath racism. What's at the root of it? Which she contends is caste, and so it's a very powerful movie, and it starts, and this is why I bring it up today. It starts by telling the story of Trayvon Martin.
Wow.
And, you know, when I'm sitting there watching that with my friends, and I'm thinking, you know, I didn't say this to them, but I was thinking to myself, when is the last time I thought about Trayvon Martin?
Wow.
And yet that young man died really because of this thing, this insidious thing that exists that, you know, prompts you to have that conversation with your son. And conversations I've had with my son and you with yours. And I mean, you know, so we live in this dynamic tension of we have to be aware, we have to be, you know, sensitive to realities, and yet we also have to believe that things will be all right and that things will be better.
Man, that idea of caste is so strong. I'm forgetting the author's name. She wrote that book, The New Jim Crow.
Michelle Alexander.
And she kind of lays it out so beautifully in the sense of, she talks about how, you know, you have this wealthy, elite white social class. I think she referred to it as a plantar elite. But you have essentially working class whites who, you know, at some point are going to look with ire upon this majority. But then what this very small elite group of people are able to do is to create tension between the working class white and the African person of African descent.
Right.
And to kind of essentially turn them against one another.
Yep.
So that this group of working class whites feels okay as long as they have this underclass that they can operate over. And so even she brings it around to King to essentially say where the establishment really moved with murderous intent was when King wasn't just speaking to the issues of the injustices against the American Negro, but she talks about how when he began to start what she referred to as a populist movement, where it was really just speaking to the issues of poor people,
period,
which is where he was in Memphis for the sanitation strike when he was ultimately killed because he began to attack the issue of caste and classism, you know what I'm saying, as opposed to just directly addressing issues that affected, African Americans. Right. But again, if you affect issues of poverty, that's going to touch us a little bit more disproportionately than other groups. Yeah. But it's just like, man, that's where kind of like they said, well, not they. Well, I don't use this anonymous they, you know what I'm saying? But those who were opposers of justice said he's got to go. He's got to go because now he's tampering with the formula.
And to that point, I know we're almost out of time here, but to that point, I think we should say that the King family does not believe that James Earl Ray was solely responsible for it. They believe there were, as you've alluded to, there were others involved in that.
The
conspiracy.
I mean, you got to have a fall guy. Somebody to blame. Unfortunately. So. But I do think that, I guess, just in closing, I will just say that, I do think that when we look at how far the hand of the Lord has guided us as a people. I mean, we've had our own exodus. I mean, we've had very much our own exodus experience. And I think that it is a cause for current celebration. And I think it is a reason. Ultimately, we know that our ultimate rest and reprieve comes when Jesus Christ comes. And this world as we know it is no more. But I do think that we can continue to push, to march, to work toward causes of justice and equality across all races, all genders, all people groups, and have some hope. And I think we can defy that indifference, that jadedness, that cynicism that I think is always, almost like gravity is trying to settle upon us so that we just kind of say,
throw your hands up.
Throw your hands up. So I just think that, again, we know where our hope comes from.
Right.
I think hope is a byproduct of being connected to God.
Yes.
And I think hope, man, I think what it does, I think it keeps you alive. I think it keeps you resilient.
Yes.
I think it gives you that bounce back, to kind of get up every time life knocks you down.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think if you develop those axioms about trouble, difficulty, adversity, there's this, I was at a gas station one day, this guy, man, in this beat up pickup truck in front of me. He got out, he had a cast on his arm, just had some scars, like he had a bar fight the night before. It just looked like he just had a bad day. And he had this sticker on the back of his pickup truck. And that's not what it said, but it just said, stuff happens. That's not what it said.
Stuff.
But it's just like, and you just tell like, life is random.
Life is random.
You know what I'm saying? But there's more to it than that. But if you know what's happening beyond the veil, you kind of can gather a hope that is beyond what you can observe through empirical means.
That's good.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good place to wrap things up for
Absolutely.
today. Pastors Debleaire, Snell, and Kirk Nugent. Brothers, we appreciate these conversations are rich and dynamic.
Absolutely.
Love them. Absolutely love them. And to our listening and viewing audience, I say God bless you, and don't forget, life, stuff happens.
Stuff happens.
Stuff happens.
Yeah.
But that's all right.
Yeah.
Just stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Debleaire Snell, and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.